Welcome to the Heat versus the World podcast. And now, stand up and make some noise for your host, Joel Jacob.
What's up, Heat Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Heat versus the World podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joel Jacob, and you can follow me on Twitter at JoelKJacob_. Without further delay, let's meet today's correspondents. First, we got George.
What's up, guys?
We got Christian.
Hey, Heat Nation.
We got Anthony.
1 down, 15 to go.
We got Kevin.
What's good, everybody?
And last but not least, Orchard.
What's up, guys?
All right, so to begin today's episode, let's talk about game one for the Heat as Miami got the first win of the playoffs. They won by a score of 115-91 against Atlanta. Leading the way, you got Duncan Robinson with 27 points and 8 threes. Jimmy Butler with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. PJ Tucker with 16 points while being 4 of 4 from the three-point line, along with having 5 rebounds. And Kyle Lowry with 10 points, 9 assists, and 4 rebounds of himself. After being off for a week, Miami went back to work and ended up getting their first playoff win at the FTX Arena since 2016, which actually came against Kyle Lowry and the Raptors. As Miami is now 15 wins away from earning title number 4, how are you guys feeling after watching the Heat win game one? Start us off, George.
I mean, you really couldn't expect a better game from the Heat. They played with tenacity. They played with purpose. They played to win. They really, really did. They put their brand on their sleeves. They went out there with a purpose to really, really show the world that this is the most disrespected team, I think, in probably in NBA history. It really strikes me as quite disrespectful to have a team play this well for the entire season, barring a few games every now and again, but to then go into the finals, go into the playoffs and really not be talked about in any capacity. And when we were getting talked about, we talked about how we had possibility of losing in the first round to the Atlanta Hawks. So to go out and absolutely dominate them for 48 minutes of pure basketball, actually 47. Then Kevin Knox came on, but we should have won that game by 35. We really should have. But to shut down a player that we were just talking about yesterday, shut him down to a point where he was the biggest non-facet. I think he might have had one of the worst playoff performance games of all time, and that's not even a joke. So there's nothing I can say but great job, and let's keep up the tenacity. And as Anthony said, 1 down, 15 to go.
Right. Christian, how about you?
I think this was a great game for Miami. Definitely a great first playoff win, first one in FTX since 2016. And I think just as far as my expectations, Miami definitely exceeded them. When I thought of this game, I figured that, Bam and Jimmy would probably go for like 20 some odd points. Tyler would go for like close to 30. But Miami was able to pull off a really convincing victory, even though Bam only had 6 points on 1 of 5 shooting and Tyler only had 6 points on 3 of 11 shooting, because those were 2 of their main scoring contributors from the regular season. But it's nice to see Duncan Robinson actually step into that role, go 9 of 10 from the field, and just have an amazing shooting night. On the other side of the ball, we have the Hawks, where Trae Young, after having a pretty electrifying performance against Cleveland in the second part of the play-in, was absolutely atrocious. Just 1 of 12 from the field, 0 of 7 from 3. He didn't look like Trae Young at all. He just looked like he was chucking up shots out there. So it was definitely a super embarrassing loss. The Hawks only shot 39% from the field and 28% from 3. It was not a great game for them. I'm not expecting this to happen going forward. However, I just have to point out that this was a terrible, terrible playoff performance for Trae Young. So if you're Miami, you're definitely looking for him to do more games like this going forward.
Right. And what's on your mind, Anthony?
Well, it's as simple as that. You took care of business. You made a statement game. You definitely wanted that after the embarrassing out that they had last year, but they took care of business. The Hawks were coming in with no rest. you know, a lot of people were freaking out saying the disadvantages of being a number 1 seed because you don't find out the opponent, you know, 2 days in advance. But to me, yeah, that's a disadvantage, of course, but the advantage that you get is so much greater than that. You're playing a team that is coming off an all-time high intense game. In the Hawks case, they were the 9th seed. So back-to-back play-in games, which were win or go home. So to exert all that energy in those games and go up against a team that's been rested is just such a major disadvantage. And in a case like that, you should come out, you should kick that team in the mouth and win by 30 points. And they very nearly did. We knew that Capella would be out. John Collins came back. That was a little bit of a surprise. He was okay. Obviously didn't do too much. I'm sure his hand wasn't 100%. Other than that, I just want to state how I spent several hours after the game just watching defensive highlights, not even blocks or steals, just stops on defense. Like, which other franchise is that locked down defensively that you can just sit there and watch defensive stops and the whole crowd gets hype over that? It's just really awesome to see how awesome the defense played. It's really cool.
Right. And you, Kevin?
Yeah, it was great to see how the Heat came out game 1. You know, again, like we all know what happened last year, you know, get that taste out their mouth, come out, get a win, set the tone. A lot of people was kind of making it excuses, you know, talking about how the Hawks were in the play-in and things like that. Well, I mean, they should have just won more games in the regular season. They wouldn't have been in this predicament. You know what I'm saying? They would have been a higher seed. So I loved it, to be honest. And I wouldn't even consider it a complete team game. I really just thought, like Anthony just mentioned, it was a defensive masterclass. Like, that's all it came down to. Like, I don't think, you know, we'll talk about it later, but I don't think some of our guys had, you know, the games that they usually have, you know what I'm saying? And really, you know, Jimmy came out, set the tone. I thought Kyle was just doing his thing as a playmaker. Bam was a menace, you know, definitely should be DPOY, but we all know that's a whole other conversation for another day. But to me, it was just a defensive masterclass. And honestly, I think we're going to win a lot of games like how we did in this game. Maybe not, you know, blowing a team out consistently, but just hang our hats on the defense. And that's what this team has been built for. And it was beautiful to see them come out and put on a show.
Right. And what's your take, Orch?
This was a very satisfying win. I mean, I expected us to take game 1, but the amount of disrespect that we've been getting from the media and fans has been unbelievable. I mean, it's like George was saying, it's just so disrespectful. Like, we've proven all season that we are a worthy team, and to have this much doubt is just awful. And I really liked how Miami opened up this series. You know, obviously we still need 3 more wins to win the series, but it was still an amazing performance. I thought everyone did a great job, even though not everyone we expected scored as high as they did. I think they all had their great they all contributed pretty good. And we had 35 assists. So we played some very unselfish basketball. We hit 18 3-pointers, and it's like everyone was saying, this was more of a defensive win for us than an offensive win. You know, we held the Hawks to 91 points, and they average 114 points per game. So that is extremely good. And, you know, the other thing is that the 91 points, I mean, a lot of that was from garbage minutes in the 4th quarter. So it was just overall a great game. I think everyone did their part, and Duncan went off.
Right. You know, looking back at this game, you know, everything went so perfect for the Heat. You know, one thing is that you got Trae Young, who only had 8 points, which was great to see. And one thing that I want to bring up is that, you know, Kevin, you brought this up, and I'm so glad someone did, because I hated the excuses some of the Hawks fans had. Like, I get it. I understand, you know, you might be a bit exhausted from those 2 playing games, but guess what? If you were simply the 7 or 8 seed, it wouldn't be too stressful. Not even that. Well, you know, if you were at least had a playoff spot, you would not have to go through all this. But that wasn't the case. So, and I get it, injuries are a thing, but look at the Heat. You know, we've been balling out, and we're the 1 seed, and that's why we were able to get the rest that we got, you know, and it's honestly ridiculous. And, you know, you look back at this whole game, it just went Miami's way from the start all the way to the very end. And, you know, like, one of my favorite moments was definitely seeing Duncan Robinson go off. Like, we will talk about this later on in the episode, but, you know, for him to receive so much hate, like, it was just such a feel-good moment. And you can't wait to see what else he's going to do for the Heat come this playoff run. I also think it helps from coming off the bench. And, you know, overall, we'll see what this Heat team is capable of doing, because obviously, you know, after getting slapped in the face, you know, this specific game, I think the Hawks will probably try to come back stronger come game 2. So, Miami just got to be ready for it. And I know they will be. So, that's basically all I got to say for that. And, moving on, we got to talk about, a lot of the things that we saw from our players because they came in and they were able to form all kinds of highlights during game 1. And because of that, it's now time for us to pick who the spotlight Heat player of the game should be. When seeing who stepped up big for the Heat, like who do you guys think should be crowned like the spotlight Heat player for this first win of the postseason? Give us your pick, Christian.
I know I already took everyone's pick because if you don't pick him, then you're just wrong. Duncan Robinson had one of the best games of the season in the first game of the playoffs. 9 of 10 from the field, 27 points, 8 of 9 from 3. He even hit the only free throw that he had. He was a plus 16, which was the highest plus minus for any bench player of the Heat. But it's just great to see that Duncan, even though he's no longer in that starting role, he is absolutely going to tear it up off the bench. So it's definitely a great confidence builder for Miami. And there were a couple other players who made key contributions as well. But as far as just a statement game for a player who necessarily hasn't had the greatest season, or at least not as great as he'd like to play, I have to go with Duncan.
Right. And how about you, Orchard?
I think the obvious answer is Duncan, but I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to say Jimmy Butler, just because, I was looking at some post and I was saying one of the things was about who has the most playoff pressure on them this season. And I saw Jimmy at like 3. And so I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Jimmy to perform well after last season. And I think he did an amazing job to start off this series. Obviously, we don't know how he's going to perform later on in the series and even in the playoffs, but just to come into this game and start off like this was amazing. And I'm not surprised. Jimmy over the years has received a lot of criticism. He did in Minnesota, he did in Philadelphia. I think he even did in part of his time in Chicago. So, he's used to, getting a lot of pressure put on him and a lot of criticism, and he just doesn't let it get into his head. He moves on from it and he performs really well. And I thought he did an amazing job to start off game 1 versus Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Duncan. I was debating between a few guys, but I got to go with Duncan for obvious reasons. Like, I remember on this very show a few months ago when Spo first put Strus into the starting lineup, and everybody was talking about how Duncan's so bad and Duncan didn't deserve his contract and blase, blase. And I was just like, you have to, when you're a shooter like that, you're gonna go through slumps. Like, we've literally seen Steph Curry, who I think and a lot of people think is the greatest shooter of all time. We've seen guys like that go in slumps. It happens. You're not gonna hit every single shot, and he was going through a slump. And I just said, like, just let him keep shooting. That's all you can. The only way you're gonna get out of a slump is by shooting through it. And Duncan, I was saying it, he's built for these moments, and I'm glad that he kept his head held high. He didn't pout. He didn't complain. He accepted his role for the team, and he came out and maximized it. And I've been saying, like, this dude is built for the playoffs. Like, I remember last year, game 1, I think he had like 26 in Milwaukee. Like, he was the main reason that we were in that game, and it went to overtime, even though we lost. But, like, he's built for the playoffs. Like, guys like Duncan are cut for the playoffs. And so I was just glad to see him. Again, I say it all the time, stay the course and keep shooting that thing because, like, he's one of our most, volatile weapons. And when he's hot, it just makes life easier for everybody else. And so shout out to Duncan, man, because he had a hell of a performance. And, this is what I expect from him.
Right. And how about you, Anthony?
Well, I'm going to go with the best 6 man in the league. And I'm not talking about Tyler Hero. I'm talking about the fans, man. They came out. They showed up white hot. They didn't even give out T-shirts yesterday. They gave out towels. But still, you saw everybody wearing white because everybody knows white hot time. I was glad to see they brought that back. They brought 7 Nation Army back, which I love. I'm so happy they brought that back too. It was rocking to that. They played Peppas with 4 minutes to go in the game. The whole building was rocking, and you can tell the whole team really feeds off all that energy, especially defensively. So just to pick someone a little different, man, I'm going to go with the fans. They really showed out yesterday.
Interesting choice. And how about you, George?
For me, it's really, really difficult to pick one. I know the obvious choice is Duncan and or Jimmy. They both had incredible games, but I'm going to go an even further direction. The reason why I'm picking this player is because he didn't play that long, played 27 minutes. He had a terrible shooting night, but what he does for this team is allow everyone else to get open. Bam Adebayo doesn't need to score, doesn't need to do anything else but what he does right now. He is the defensive anchor. He allows Duncan to get over the amount of screen and rolls that he does with Duncan to get him open. The ability to feel safe on the defensive end, knowing that he's there, so that these players like Duncan can focus on their offensive game. Jimmy as well. You need to. People that watch the NBA today really only like most of them that I see are fans since Curry was doing well and Harden was dominating. Having big statistical performances is fantastic, but when you're playing 38 minutes a night, it's a lot easier than when you play with Bam. Bam played 27 minutes. They gave 15 to Dedmon, and he didn't even play that well offensively. But the fact that what he does on defense is amazing. It just allows so much more to happen. And I know people are pointing it out in the chat. He had the best plus minus tied with Jimmy, 20 plus 27. So when he's on the field, we're in a different demon. And I know there's a slight injury to him now. Hoping everything's okay, but he's my player of the game.
Right. That's honestly a really good choice because, when you looked at those switches and everything, like he made everything so easy for this Heat team. And, for me, I'm going to take a different route too. And I'm going to go with PJ Tucker because, when he first came to Miami, some people were skeptical about the decision, but he's come in and he's done so much this season. And, one thing that really helped out was the 3-point shooting in this past game because, let's see, he was shooting great at first, but then, came the All-Star break and coming back. We noticed that he sort of struggled. He once led the league in 3-point field goal percentage, but because he kept missing his shots, he eventually started falling in that list. And, he came in yesterday and he just played amazing. He was 4 from 4 from the 3-point line. He would shoot some of his threes near the Atlanta bench and would have something to say to them after a couple of those shots, which was also great to see. He brings that toughness, which is what you love. And then you also have the fact that he has that championship pedigree as well, being on that Bucks team last season. So for him to be a part of this championship adventure, it's going to help Miami a lot big time. And, I can't wait to see what else he's going to do for us because he's just that important to this team. And, when you have a guy like him in the locker room, someone that can toughen these guys up, you love it. It's perfect. And, that toughness, that energy, everything he brings, I feel like we can talk about the impact PJ has on this team for a whole episode because that's how much of an impactful player he really is. But, anyways, that's our Spotlight Heat Player of the Week. To those who's listening to this pod on the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel, we love to hear who your Spotlight Heat Player of the Week is as well. So go ahead and comment down below and tell us who you think deserves the honor of the Spotlight Heat Player of the game, not week, since we're doing pods a little more often than usual. So, but anyways, it's also time to look back at game 1 and talk about some improvements the Heat can make to be even better come game 2. After all, this is a Heat team that is only focused on improving their game. As PJ said after the win during the press conference that although they got the win, they could have been better. With all that being said, what are some improvements that could be made come game 2? Kick us off, Anthony.
So obviously they played a very solid game all around yesterday. But one of the things I want to mention that I didn't like yesterday and is kind of a trend for Spoelstra a little bit is for some reason, he left all the starters in the game when they were up 30 with 8 minutes to go. When it kind of got to that point, they went on a nice run to push it up to 30. I was kind of screaming, call timeout, get these guys out the game. At that point, that's when I felt comfortable to get them out of the game. To me, there was no reason why they were still in the game. He ended up taking them out 3 minutes later with 5 minutes to go. So at least he did take them out of the game, but it just scares me having the starters in. There's no reason you can't call timeout and just get them out immediately because it scares me. I was watching game 1 in 2012 when Derrick Rose jumped in the air, 30 seconds left in a meaningless portion of the game. It was already over. And obviously he got hurt. So you never know with these injuries, man. And obviously it scares me. And then even after that, he brought in the bench guys, but not all of them because Max Strus was still playing. I don't understand that. Max Strus is a starter. There's no reason you couldn't have seen Oladipo or Markieff or UD. maybe it's looked at as a little bit of a slight to those guys because those guys are champions and former All-Stars in Oladipo's case. So maybe garbage time is a little bit above them or below them. But still, there's no reason to have a starter in the game that late. I don't know what the deal with Oladipo is. He wasn't in the team picture either. I don't know if that's sus or coincidence or not. Just a weird thing I picked up on. So I kind of wish Spo would get these guys out of the game a little bit earlier in these blowout situations.
Right. And honestly, like, don't even remind me of what happened to Derrick Rose. Like, that's still such a tragic thing to look back on to this day. And, overall, like, that's a good point you brought up because I was wondering, like, with the Heat up like 30, you got like Jimmy and all them still in the game. Like, it feels like it should be time for some of the other guys to step in, guys like Kier and all of them. I don't know. I mean, I've never really questioned Spo's decisions before, but like, I didn't really get the point of it having them out, but I don't know. He probably has some reason for it. Who knows? Let's see, Orchard, what's on your mind?
First off, I just want to say I totally agree with Anthony. I want to, like, a little more recently, but the fact that they played Luka in the last game of the season and he got hurt was really scary. I mean, I'm not a Mavericks fan, but I can't imagine what they're going through because, I mean, they already lost game 1 and they could potentially go down 0-2 in the series today. So yeah, that I was a little concerned that he kept in the starters for so long, and he kept Max Strusson and a couple of other players that should have probably been on the bench. But, besides that, I would have liked to see us turn the ball over a lot less. I think that's a common problem that we've had all season. I think we had 15 turnovers in the game, maybe 14. And, something I definitely want to limit coming into the next couple of games because while Atlanta might not matter against the Atlanta series as much, it'll hurt us definitely later on in the playoffs. And yeah, that's something we have to definitely do better on. We need to hit our free throws. I mean, I think we shot 61% from the line. Definitely something that was, especially Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think he missed 4 free throws, which is not like him at all. So I really hope that we hit our free throws because we might not be up by as much as 30 in the next game. So, you always look back in games and you're like, what if he had hit these many free throws? And it can definitely change the outcome of a game. So definitely hit our free throws. And, the last thing is Hero and Bam. I mean, I think Bam did an amazing job on the defensive end, so I'm not really concerned about his scoring. It's a low amount of points, but Hero, I would have liked to see him score a little more. Again, it doesn't really matter in this game because of how much we scored it. We won by. But again, if it's a close game, we're going to need him to step up, especially if we have other guys like Jimmy or Lowry not scoring a lot. I think that's pretty much it. Just one quick thing to point out was the fast break points. We only had 5 fast break points. And I just think that's something we could do a little better on because I think we can score a lot more on fast break. And besides that, I think we did a phenomenal job. Not really much else to say, considering how much we won by.
Mm-hmm. And you, George?
Yeah, as everyone's pointed out, we really had like probably one of the all-round best games we've had in a long time yesterday against this Hawks team. But there's no game without improvements. I think that we have to limit the amount of times they're going to get to the line. And I know it's easy said than done. It's a ref's whistle sort of thing. You got to really put yourselves in the best position to limit these fouls because earlier on in the game, we were getting into some pretty weird, dangerous territory and foul trouble, which didn't end up metastasizing into anything. We've had the only player getting into 4 fouls on the night was Gabe, but it was earlier on we were kind of giving away way too many free throws. They ended up shooting 27 to our 18. So you got to limit it. They do hit their free throws. They shot an 85% clip last night. So it's one of those things that you'd rather give up. You'd rather not give up these hard shots, but it's very it's going to be a team effort because to not foul means to be in the best position every time. So it's one of those things you're going to have to give up sometimes to get the best result. But if we can try and limit, players like Trae Young getting 7 free throws a game, it's probably keen to look at as well. But I'm not too worried about it. I think we've played the same way we did today. Any other day, we're going to sweep them anyway. So it's going to be, a wait and see situation.
Right. And what's on your mind, Christian?
I think that the main thing here, as far as just defense, overall shooting, Miami did a lot of things very well, and they executed down the stretch in order to keep Atlanta from coming back. But I think the most important thing to focus on for next game is definitely not fouling, because 22 personal fouls, that's a lot, and it's going to put Atlanta on the line. Atlanta shot 27 free throws, which is not what you want to see your opponent doing, especially if they have a good free throw shooting percentage. That could really make the difference in the game. I also just want to turn our attention to Miami's free throws. They went 11 of 18 from the line this game, so that was 61%. It wasn't that much of a difference maker this game, but in closer games, if you're missing 6-7 free throws, that could really change the tide of that game. So I think Miami just has to focus on playing better defense while having active hands. Don't foul excessively, and also take a little bit more time at the line to make sure you hit those free throws, because they're called free throws for a reason.
Right. I agree. I was definitely a bit concerned about it, especially when you saw it from Jimmy, like missing, as you said, Orchard, I believe like 4 free throws. Obviously in a game like this where it wasn't really close, it really doesn't matter. But when you're in a game where it's going to be close, it's really important that you're making those free throws, especially for a guy like Jimmy who knows how to draw fouls and stuff. So, hopefully that, game one was just simply a weird situation and something that he'll bounce back from, regarding the free throws. And, he'll be able to shoot better because, like I said, that's one of his main strengths, being able to attack other players and being able to draw those fouls that can get him to the free throw line and get those points on the board for Miami. So, that's hopefully, like I said, a one-time thing moving forward in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens from there. Like overall, it's even hard trying to talk about improvements for this team after seeing such an amazing game like that, because there's really everything that went on was so great. Bam playing amazing defense, even though you got clowns saying he shouldn't be defensive player of the year. Jimmy having a good game, starting to officially, I guess you could say bounce back from this last season. And, everyone's just doing great right now. And that's all you could ask for is from that game one. And, you can't wait to see what happens come the rest of this playoff run. That, before we move on, I feel like it's time that we now just address like another player that was hooping that, we talked a lot about earlier, but I feel like it's only right that they get to be the star of this specific segment. And without further ado, it's time for the HEATMuse Stat of the game. Before we get into it, make sure to follow HEATMuse on Twitter for all Miami Heat stats. His handle is HEATMUSE. With that being said, Duncan had himself a career day as he finished with 27 points, which is a playoff career high for him, while shooting 9 of 10 from the field, along with being 8 of 9 from 3. It should also be acknowledged that those 8 3-pointers is now a playoff record for Duncan, as he was originally tied with Mike Miller and Damon Jones for having 7 threes in a playoff game for Miami. To add on, Duncan also had a true shooting percentage of 129.3%, allowing Debo to have the most efficient 25-plus point game in playoff history. And, when you look at these stats as they're presented, what do you guys make of this amazing performance by Duncan? Tell us, George.
I think it tells you that it's just an incredible player that we were right to pay in the end. And I'm going to fall on my sword here and say I was completely wrong. A couple of pods ago, we were talking about rotation issues, and I said that Duncan could find himself out of the rotation for this Hawks game. Now, if I said that 24 hours ago, there's some merit to it. But after seeing what he did, it's nothing short of incredible what he did last night. It was really, really something special and something to behold. The fact that he can have such a mediocre season, but walk into a playoff game off the bench in 22 minutes, put up 27 points of 9 and 10 shooting. And he did that Dr. J reverse layup, which was better than any 3 that he hit, in my opinion, even the one where he got fouled and still went in. But I got to tie it back into teamwork as well, because Bam, the way Bam gets him open and makes this offense tick and run is just, it's art. It really is to watch. It's just fantastic. And it's the way that basketball should be played, because it's a team sport. And, a lot of teams write us off because we don't have that one star, But the Spurs, when they were killing it, they had a massive depth on their team, and it worked to their advantage. We have that depth, and going back to the point, Duncan, when it comes down to it, is the depth. He comes off the bench and to be our leading scorer in only 22 minutes is just great. But this team needs him, needs his shooting, and hopefully there's just better games to come from him. I hope that Eric doesn't. Sorry, Eric. Spoelstra doesn't really mess with him rotation that much, because I think bringing him off the bench kind of suits his game a little bit more. You got to light that fire in these players. You really do. Look at Tyler Hero, who was really having quite a down season. It wasn't even a down season. He actually improved a lot from his first season, but he had a season that wasn't up to his standards. They put him off the bench, and look at him now. They lit a fire under him, and he's the sixth man of the year unanimously. So Duncan deserves all the respect, and I hope we can see just better games from him in the future.
Right. And Orchard, how do you feel about Duncan's performance?
It was great. I mean, I think the biggest factor for me was how efficient he was. I mean, scoring 27 points on 10 shots is absolutely amazing. And it's tough, when you don't get many shots like many stars in the league do, it's not easy to score that many points. So he got 10 points and he made 10 he got 10 shots, and he made 9 of them. So that was the most impressive part for me. And, the other factor was that I think he shocked a lot of people, Heat fans, NBA fans, the media, because see, when you look at players like Duncan, us Heat fans will see some positives in him, but because of the amount of negatives he's had this season, because of his shooting slumps, it gets passed out to the media as negatives. And no one outside of the Heat fan community are going to see the positives. And so, the amount of slander Duncan's been getting has been atrocious. And, the fact that he came into this game and performed really well, I hope he consistently can do it, because we know he has a pattern of sometimes performing well and then struggling the next couple of games. But, something just felt a little different about this performance. It was just his mentality coming off of it. And, it's like George was saying, I think we should keep him off the bench. I think he performs really well off the bench. And yeah, I love to see it. And I hope he continues to play this way.
Right. And Christian, you?
It was just a sensational game from Duncan Robinson. And as I said before, he's my Spotlight Heat player of the game. It's actually super impressive that he made NBA history in being the first player to do that in a playoff, just to have the true shooting percentage of 129.3. That's insane. It's almost unheard of. So I think it was a great game for Duncan, and it could be a sign of things to come. And this just speaks to Miami's depth as an NBA team. The fact that Duncan, who really is more like eighth man in the rotation now, is just coming out and scoring 27 points. Meanwhile, Strus, just a couple of weeks ago, he's dropping 30 points. Caleb Martin, he's dropping big buckets on the Bucks. There's a lot of talent on this Miami team, and I feel like it hasn't even reached its full potential yet. So that's definitely what makes Miami one of those juggernauts of the East, especially the fact that Depot didn't even play. I think that, you just see a lot more potential for this Miami team. But congratulations are definitely in order for Duncan Robinson, and I'm hoping he could follow up with a similar performance in game 2.
Right. And you, Anthony?
Listen, making shots is one thing, okay? Anybody could stand there and make shots. The level of difficulty on literally every single attempt that he had last night was just wild. So the fact that he was able to go 8 of 9 from 3, 9 of 10 overall, because even obviously the jelly layup he had wasn't easy either. So the fact that you were able to have such a high true shooting percentage with that level of difficulty is crazy. Like, he really makes it look so easy, but I can't state enough how hard it is to be shooting off the dribble while running around nonstop, and to still have the legs to get that kind of lift and square up the upper half of your body to able to look at the rim and just nail it every single time. I'm not even sure if he hit the rim yesterday. So obviously I feel great for Duncan Robinson. Whoever put the headband in his locker room, shout out to them too, because maybe that turned him up a little bit too. And yeah, that's an insane true shooting percentage, as Christian was saying. Basically, for people that don't know, that takes into account the value of 3-pointers and free throws. And there's a formula that you calculate it. And literally all of the top 10 leaders in true shooting percentage this year were big men. they were all centers or power forwards because they're close to the rim. Obviously, you're not missing many shots. So for a guy to do what he did yesterday, it really is an all-time performance. And I'm excited that he can shut the haters up a little bit because I've certainly been in his corner all year.
Right. And George, I know you want to add.
I just want to go back to a point about I was making before with the depth. The fact that we can have Tyler Hero, Max Strus go 6 for 19 from the field, 1 from 9 from 3, and still win by 115 is something that we thought that wasn't possible, because I remember the start of the season, even a little bit into the season, we're talking about how scoring could possibly be an issue for this team because we really don't have that many bucket getters until we see it in effect, like we saw last night. Duncan comes out and puts up 27 points and really carries, the offense on a wide scale. Really gives us that energy pump, that edge when it comes to playing in these clutch situations. But we were winning by 30 at one point. Like we didn't even need Duncan as over the Hero or Strus to score, because this team is so well rounded in how they play, passes the ball so efficiently that these true shooting percentages actually they reflect the bigger picture and how well we play when it comes down to it. So Duncan to have that game is a byproduct of how well the team's playing as well. And when it comes down to it, this team at any given night, anyone can put up those numbers. Really, it is possible. So today it's Duncan, tomorrow could be Hero, the next day it could be, Bam putting up 35. It's just it's never ending with his team. So many weapons, so much to look forward to.
Right. For me, looking back at his performance, it was just such a good thing to see from him because, we paid him $90 million and, a lot of people were concerned about it because it's like, he's not having that good of a season. Is this an overpay or what? But, for him to go out there and have those type of games, that's what we need from him, And George, you brought up a really good point, because you have guys like Hero and Strus who didn't necessarily have good games. So to have a guy like Duncan go out and just shoot the lights off of the court, y'all know what I mean. Like, it was just overall amazing to see from him, and you just can't wait to see how much more he'll do for this team. Because will he make 8 of his 9 threes next game? Probably not. Probably a little less than that. But we know that he's going to be ready and he's going to be fearless with it, and that's one thing that Jimmy brought up in that post-game interview after the game finished. Like, he said it himself, like Duncan, he was brave with it. He was fearless with it. Like, he was going out there and shooting like there was no tomorrow. And it paid off big time for the Heat and was a big reason why we were able to blow the Hawks out. So overall, great performance from him, and I just can't wait to see him continue to prove those haters wrong, because if there's any time to do that, it's during this playoff run for the Heat. Anyways, so before we close out today's episode, it's important that we talk about this upcoming game for the Heat as we get ready for game 2. With Miami currently leading the series 1-0, like, what do you guys expect from the Heat as they try to get their second win of the series? Give us your take, Orchard.
I think the one thing is to continue our defensive effort. I don't think Trae Young is going to score 8 points again, because we all know that's super unlikely. I hope we still keep him underneath his normal average. I think he'll still score a good amount. I don't think he'll score 8, but if we can keep him to, around where he averages or a little bit less, that would be great. And, I forgot to mention this in the first segment, but we also kept Herter and Bogdanovich to a pretty low scoring night too. So, if we can continue our defensive efforts against the Hawks and hold them to lower than usual, that's always a positive. So that's one thing. Obviously we're not talking about improvements. Turnovers going to be better, free throw shooting. And I see that a couple of our players are questionable for tomorrow, like Bam and Deadman and PJ, but I'm sure they're all going to play. And so, I don't have much to say. I don't expect us to win by a huge margin compared to last game. So, we've got to make sure we keep the same effort throughout the entire game. And yeah, I don't have much to say because they already started off the series on a great start. So that's all I have.
Mm-hmm. And you, George?
Yeah, it's about keeping that intensity, the same intensity, because this Atlanta Hawks team, as much as we've talked our stuff about them all week, and it's time to back it up, because this is a team that's going to look at what happened the other night and say, you know what, this isn't going to happen again. And they're not in the playoffs for no reason. We got to remember that. But keeping what we do at the highest level we can do it is going to be the best way to beat them, because Trae Young's going to want to have his bounce back game, his chip on his shoulders there again. It was there last night, but Jimmy got the better of him. Really, it did. So it's about keeping that intensity, about rebounding better as well. We need to crash the boards, especially if they start getting, really, if they put an emphasis on that as well. They do have a lot of big bodies out there, so it's going to, even without Clint Capella. So it's about playing the boards right, even getting, passing the ball as well as we did the other night. We can always do better. So keeping the ball moving, keeping the guys ready, and to a point as well, if there's a point in the game where we're winning ahead by a lot, resting the big, our stars like we did last night, PJ playing 24 minutes is important, because he's getting to an age where he can't really play those 30, 35-minute nights. Keeping Bam at low minutes as well, while it doesn't look good on the stat sheet, it works well for us, because we can call upon Dwayne Dedman to go put those minutes in. But keep what we did the other night in the back of our minds and use it as a blueprint to move forward, and we'll be completely fine.
Right. And you, Anthony?
Well, we already know that Clint Capella will be out again. That was already officially put out there. And they said anyways that he was going to be reevaluated in a week. Obviously, this might be a little bit of a different series if he was healthy, just because he provides such mismatch issues for the Heat, because he would probably be the biggest guy in the court almost at all times. But other than that, like George was saying, if they keep bringing the defensive intensity, if Bam Adebayo keeps playing the way that he was, I'm sorry, I don't know if y'all heard that screaming, but that's Trae Young screaming because he knows that he's going to get locked down again. I'm predicting less than 10 points again from Trae Young, and the Heat win by 35.
Oh, okay. I thought someone was getting murdered outside your house.
It's Trae Young. It's Trae Young.
Bro, you gotta put a muzzle on your phone, man.
All right. So, Christian, how about you?
I really can't back up my take with the sound effects. Again, hats off, Anthony, for the second pod in a row, properly using sound effects and catching everyone off guard with your take. But I think it's going to be another win in game 2 for Miami. I could see it being a similar margin of victory. I don't know if Trae is going to have as terrible of a game as he did in game 1. However, I can see Miami winning by double digits again. I'm going to give my final score prediction as 111-98. I think it's going to be a little closer, but I think down the stretch, Miami's just going to execute better than Atlanta. And I think we could see a 2-0 victory heading back to the ATL for Miami.
Right. For me personally, I also expect Atlanta to come in with a much better fight than last game. But I also expect the Heat to run off with it at some point. Atlanta will probably keep it competitive a little longer than they did last game. Maybe all the way until the second half. But then Miami will just take off with it and will probably win by double digits, and probably by a score similar to what you said, Christian, where, it's not like about 20 or 30 points like last game, but still a respectable amount for the Heat. That's to get ready for those next 2 games in the ATL. So overall, I think Miami should be ready for it, and I expect everyone to play. I know there was been news about Bam and his squad, but I'm sure he'll be ready to go. And now with the news that he just found out about not being a Defensive Player of the Year finalist, I know he's ready to go on that court and show people like, okay, so y'all don't want to make me one of the finalists? That's fine. I'm going to make y'all look really stupid right now. So I can't wait to see what he's going to do come this next game. Anyways, we talked so much on today's episode that before we end it, make sure to check out our Twitter and Instagram page at HVTW Podcast, while checking out our website at hvtwpodcast.wordpress.com. That way you can still have access to 24/7 Miami Heat content, even when we're not recording a new episode. Also, we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, because we'll be recording a new episode after every playoff win for the Heat, meaning that if God is willing, we'll have at least 15 more episodes to drop before we officially close the door on season 2 of Heat versus the World. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Heat versus the World podcast, and we'll see you guys soon with another episode. Hit my music because we out.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Heat versus the World podcast.